Hello, everyone. Okay, today, in response to or in follow up to the last video where I mentioned that I wanted to do some updates to the blog where you're watching these videos to allow comments and likes and a hit counter or something, so I could see how many times the video's been viewed and stuff like that. Because of the fact that I'm not using YouTube. Means that I kind of have to handle all this on my own. I wouldn't mind making it to YouTube. I just can't get my videos to look any good on YouTube at all. If you want to see it, what it looks like, go to YouTube and look up the Get Basics video under Snare Chops, and you will see that it looks like crap. That was shot in full 1080p on my monitor, and YouTube takes it and crams it down into almost nothing, and it looks like crap. So until I can figure out a way to make YouTube not look like crap, I'm doing this. But that means I now have to kind of handle all this stuff on my own. But in an advantage, it gives me stuff to write about. It gives me stuff to develop and stuff to show you. So I need a back end. I prefer Rails. So I'm going to use Rails for this. Other things, I'm going to use Node. The video that is, or the server that's serving this video that you're watching right now is running on Node. It's like 30 lines of code. It's on my GitHub if you want to see it under vidserv. It's really simple. It's really cool that I could kind of get around the whole, or be able to stream things without having to, really write this really complicated server or spend any money. I mean, I pay for the server itself, but I don't have to pay for any other product. It's kind of nice that for $5 I can do all this. So development doesn't have to be expensive if you find the right ways to do it, and you kind of get out of the system and kind of tell the man you're not gonna play into their games or something. So I need a backend. And I had made an attempt with Node, and it's just not going to be persistent enough. It's not really tied up to a database. You can use databases with Node, but I might as well just do this in Rails. So that's what I'm going to do. So first thing is I use Nitrous for my Rails development. Reason being, it's nice to take it everywhere. So I can go to someone else's house and pick up on their computer that doesn't have the development environment set up. I can pick up where I left off and do other things. I can, I've recently changed out the hard drives in my computers and had to reinstall the operating system, and then I would have had to reinstall everything and then pull it down and all these other things. So I need to, I'm trying to do this. And I lost my train of thought. Well, that's for unedited video. Here you guys go. See, I have no idea what I'm talking about. So, anyways, we're going to pick this up. So, let's go to step number one would be to go to, for me anyways, the way I like to do things is I'm going to create a repository for this. So, we will call this, what should we call this? We'll call it blog backend. Just because I'm boring at the moment, I might rename it later on. Yeah, sure, I'll open this up. You guys can use it as a base project for your stuff if you'd like. This isn't going to have a whole lot of specific code in here that is any proprietary or anything. Don't attempt to be malicious, but yeah. So I'm trusting you guys or something. So, okay, so now we've got a repository set up. Great. We need to pull it down. So in the convention for Nitrous is to put everything inside your workspace folder. So it's a lot like my repos folder on my computer, or maybe your projects folder, stuff like that. So I'm going to git clone github.com super secret username and blog backend. And okay. So what I'm going to do here is also a thing to note is I'm not actually creating the blog with this. The blog runs using Jekyll on GitHub, so I'm not interested in creating a complete rewrite of that site or anything like that. I mean, that may come one day, but I'm very happy with Jekyll and the tools that it provides. It's so super simple to add posts and stuff like that. So really all I'm looking for is an API. So this is really a lesson on APIs and how to develop just endpoints. So this really isn't going to have any HTML in it or anything like that. It's just going to be JSON endpoints, similar to using APIs that you may have used in the past. So this is how you do them in the back end. Okay, so now that we have our folder, right, we're going to go into blog backend, and then because of the way that I do things, this is a small side effect. I'm going to do Rails, if I could spell, new, and we're going to call it blog API here because I think that's a more descriptive name of what it is. So, and Rails might not be happy if I have both capitalized. So, yeah, we're going to just run Rails new. It's going to generate a whole bunch of files for us, and then it's going to run bundle install and all that stuff. So that does take a little bit, a second of time. But again, I want to talk about while this is running. So first things I'm going to do is I have a couple goals. So I want a hit counter, and I want like and unlike, or like and dislike buttons, kind of like thumbs up, thumbs down. And I also want comments, but I want to do this in the way that I can release and then upgrade and release again and upgrade and release again. Sometimes it's not good to tackle a project all at once and just do all the work for it and then push it out there. It'd be really nice, in my instance, to just get the hit counters working and then push it out to production, host it, run it, and then and then I can add the other features later and do sequential deploys. So that's a good technique for taking things in small steps. Try to break down your projects into tiny pieces. How can I do this so that I get usability, and then I can upgrade to the eventual features that I want. Okay. So now that we're in here, the side effect that I was talking about was this, that it creates a subfolder in here, and I don't like the subfolder inside. I want all of my stuff to be at the root level. So if you're using git init, then it should work exactly as you expect. But I don't like to do that because it can cause conflicts with things, and sometimes it's tough to get it up to the actual what's it called, the get it up to GitHub without causing conflicts and stuff. So maybe that's an extra step, but it's simple enough to fix. So there we go. So now we have our we'll run git status, confirm everything looks good. Yep. And then right out of the bat, I'm going to add an initial version. Initial commit. Oh, well, yeah, duh. That doesn't take a comment. That's the next step. So git commit initial commit. And then we will git push origin master, super secret username and super secret password. Okay, so now we have our basically the base here on GitHub. And the reason I do this is because you might want to go back. Maybe I make some major mistakes and I want to go all the way back to when all I did was create the project. So this is a really good technique to use, just to go back. Yeah, So Rails does a bunch of things. It creates these readmes and all this stuff, and you know, yeah. Okay. So now that we are we've got some stuff set up, it's time to start building this out. So like I said, the very first thing that I want to do is the hits, right? So I'm actually going to create, let's see, Rails generate controller. It's really the home controller, because I'm just gonna hang all these stuff off of the home for the moment. Rails is plural. And that will create just like the base controller for me that I can then use to save some of this stuff. And I don't need separate controllers at the moment. Again, start small and then refactor. Don't try to make something so complex right off the bat. It's not going to save you any time. You're going to be sitting here and not having anything to work with right off the bat. So now inside of our app controllers folder, we have a home controller. Technically, we could hang everything off of the application controller, but that's not needed at the moment. Rails convention is to create your own controller that inherits from the home controller. It's convention. Following conventions is great because then people can understand your code, read your code, and know what's going on without having to go through and find things that aren't really the normal pattern. Okay, so now I will need to create some models. So we will do Rails generate model, and we're going to call the model hit, right? And it will have it's going to have its own ID, but then I need it to have the post ID. Because that's how I'm going to tie that to which post this is a hit counter for. And that's going to be a string, because it comes across in the post IDs from Jekyll are they're not numerical, they're strings. So we need a post ID, and then we're going to need a I guess we'll call it count, and that will be an integer. Yeah. So that's going to generate that, and it's also going to generate the migration for me, which is great. Another thing I like to do is I like to have my migrations also set some of this stuff up for me. So, and also have extra restrictions. So I don't want, if a hit comes in that doesn't have a post ID, I'm going to handle that in validations inside of my my model, but I also want my database to refuse it. So if for whatever reason my validation doesn't work, then this still, the database itself will still refuse it. The count also is going to be false, but we'll also have a default of 0, which is really nice, because then I don't have to, if it's a new one, then set it to, it automatically, if I create one of these, it'll automatically have a hit of 0, and then I can increment that. So this may be, this may actually be kind of overkill, but because it may not work exactly the way I'm thinking, but we'll see when we get that far. So I've updated the migration, and then the very next thing to do is, before we start working with our model, let's go ahead and run that migration. So we're going to rake db migrate, and probably I needed to run create first, but maybe rake will take care of this for me. Oh, yeah, it did. Okay, so now we have our hits table. So, and it should have the things that we typed in the migration. So that's great. We are already doing good. So I'm going to make let's make a controller action called hit. And in the controller action, we will, we're going to receive a, do hit and So well, actually, let's update the model. Let's do that. So in the model, we need those two validations, right? So validates, I can't remember. So Google is your friend. Google is definitely your friend. So Rails model validations. And that should give us here, yep, active record validations. Perfect. This is exactly what I was looking for. So we're going to go through the documentation. Yes, why use validations? I've been on this article many different times, so I just need to find the method that I'm looking for. Validates, acceptance, confirmation, exclusion, format, inclusion, length. Numericality, that's a good one. So this helper validates that your attributes only have numeric values. By default, it will match an optional sign followed by an integer or floating point number. So we will do validates. Well, yeah. So we're going to, well, let's copy some of this because we're going to need in our counts, we want the counts to definitely be, was it count or counts? Count, singular. Okay, so this is going to make sure that anything that we save for the count is only going to be an integer. So it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. So that's just a protection against ourselves. Presence. I think presence is right. So this helper validates that the specified attributes are not empty. Okay, that's good. So that's the other thing that we want. We want to make sure that, let's do validates count as well as, what was it, post ID. And presence true. Okay, another thing about this is to, I like models in Rails. Rails is a dynamic language, so things kind of sort of exist. Like there's no static typing, there's no, it's really hard for IntelliSense to pick things up, and if all you did was go to this model, you wouldn't really know what was on it. So what I like to do is notate it. So we've got an ID, which is an integer, and then we also have our, what was it, post ID, which is also, or which is a string, and then we have our count, which is an integer, and then we have our timestamps, which are created at and what are they created at and updated at, and they are both the date time fields. But those are default. So the first one and the last one are obvious. Pretty much every model in Rails has that, but the second two aren't obvious because they're not really notated. You'd have to go in and look at this, or in your schema RB, which would then tell you what's on your models. That, or you could just play around and guess and hope you get one right. So that can be a downside to Rails. So it's nice to explicitly state things, even if they're just in comments. That way, when you go back, you look at it, you know exactly what's there. Okay, so when we get a hit, we expect a post ID. So we will do, I like to do, let's see, if post, or if params post ID, I don't know, blank will work. Let's see, if params post ID is nil, no. Oh, switching languages is equals nil, then return for what is it, head not found, which should be a 404. So that means that if we don't have a post ID, then it's going to quit immediately and give back a 404, which is misleading, yes, but, or I could do a 403, so not authorized. So that will be, I guess maybe that's a little more like that's more for authentication though. So maybe I should do more of a 500 error, but we'll leave that for now. So okay. So the way we want this to work is we want them to hit the route basically with this information. So we want it'll be by convention we are updating. So this should be a post or a put request. So it should be, let's do a put, and then we will have /hit, and then /our post ID, post ID. And then that should be really all we need because we know that this is always going to increment. Now the other thing is we do need a get to get the sorry, we need to get the current hit value when people visit the page. Well, actually no, because when they visit the page for the first time, we're gonna increment the hit, and then it's gonna return back how the hit the current hit count. Okay, so let's do that. If params post ID equals nil, then return head not authorized end. Else, which we don't need else because we have a return there, then we want to do, let's see, hit equals hit dot find by post ID. We're going to pass in params post ID, and that should return an object. The syntax is not let's do that at the end. Okay. So then we'll do an else here that has the return head not authorized. Which, I guess 404 makes more sense because we couldn't find the post ID that you gave us, which was nothing. It also wouldn't match the route, so this is probably, again, a little overkill. Okay, so hit. So we've got our hit. So the next thing we need to do is if hit nil. Oh, that's right, I can do that. Dot nil. Then hit equals new hit, or hit dot create. Switching languages. Hit dot create, and we'll pass in the post ID is params post ID, and then the count will be 1 because this is the very first time that it's been hit. So then the other scenario is else we'll do hit dot count. Is there a shortcut way to increment an integer on a model? Increment integer Rails model. increment a number field by 1, usually representing a count. This is used for caching aggregate values, so they don't need to be computed every time. They post count, comment count, otherwise methods deprecated or moved in the latest, the last existing version shown here. Okay. Increment a numeric field by 1 via direct SQL update. Maintaining counter cache columns. Okay, this looks good. So, oh, it looks we can actually do this. Looks like we can actually do this right on. So increment the post count column for the record with an ID of 5. Okay, well, this is great, but it's not going to return. We also want to get the data back. We don't want to just increment it and then move on. We want to increment it and then also get the count back. So we're just going to do it the age-old good way of just doing hit count equals hit count plus 1. Let's actually move this down to the next line. And no, yeah, we do want an end eventually. Hit count equals hit dot count plus 1, and we will return at that point. Well, we want to save, right? Hit dot save. If hit dot save, then if it's successful at saving, then we're going to return a JSON count, JSON of, well, we don't need the whole thing sent back. We really just need, can we do text? Rails return single number. Those are all queries. It's not quite what we want. Well, let's look at the doc that has head in it, because that's going to give us some of the other methods we can use. So there's render, redirect to head, content for partials, nested layouts. Let's see. Using render nothing. We want to render. No, that's a view. Render the view. Rendering templates. We don't need a template. We just want to send back a single number, a single digit. Rendering with inline. That'll be completely if you're willing to use inline. Okay. Rendering text. Here we go. Plain text, no markup at all. Back to the browser using plain option render. Confirm that other things I don't really. Raw body. You don't care about the content type of the response. So we should use plain. Okay, so we will return, let's see, back. You can send plain text with no markup at all back to the browser using the plain option. Render. Okay, good. So this is what we want. So render plain and then just the number. Render return render plain and then our number, which is hit dot count. And then if the save is unsuccessful, then we're going to return an error code. Return head what's the, can I just do an error code? I want to just do an error code. Let's see if that works, right? So, okay, so we have some logic in here. So I need to test this stuff out, yes. But in order to test it, I'm going to need to have a route for it. Okay, so we're going to create a route in config routes.rb. And actually, we will do that in a future episode. So I will see you guys in a little bit.